Hello and welcome to The Big Picture. I am Tina Jha. With just a week to go before its end, the Trump administration has declassified a sensitive document on the US strategic framework for the Indo-Pacific from the year 2018. The 10-page document, declassified in part by US National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien, outlines the objectives and strategies with regard to China, North Korea, India, and other countries in the Indo-Pacific region. So on this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the declassified US report on Indo-Pacific and the growing importance of India in the region. Joining me on the program are Mr. Shakti Sinha, Director, Atal Bihari Vajpayee Institute of International Studies, Vadodara, former Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, and Dr. Sriram Cholia, Foreign Affairs expert. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on The Big Picture. Let me take that point to Mr. Cholia. Do you agree that this move signals continuity of the United States Indo-Pacific strategy to key partners, especially India, Australia, and Japan, amid the change in administration that's going to happen in the country?
Yeah, Tina, it's a transition period. So I think the outgoing administration wants the same level of pressure that they had applied on China, or even more than that, to carry on in the new incoming Joe Biden administration. And there are, like Ambassador was saying, some signals that Biden administration may not be as aggressive in pushing back against China as Trump was, at least in the last final 2 years of his term. So I think the timing is explained by that. And in a way, if you see, the Trump administration had something called a national security strategy that they issued early in the administration in 2017. And then this seems to be a subset of that for this region, because, you know, their national security strategy encompasses different regions of the world. And I think increasingly now there is a bipartisan consensus, whether one agrees or not, that Biden will be softer on China. I mean, that's a debate in itself. But otherwise, there seem to be the establishment view in the US is that China poses a overwhelming threat to American values and interests, and therefore it must be pushed back using all means. And there are good signs that this will indeed happen, because you look at the Biden team, the new team that's coming in, Antony Blinken, for example, the State Secretary of State, he's on record telling Indian Americans just before the US election that we have a common challenge to deal with, and what he calls increasingly assertive China. And he says, including its aggression towards India at the line of actual control. And he says we have to put ourselves in a position of strength to tackle China. And he says India is going to be a key partner in that effort. So that's quite clear. Biden himself has said this. Blinken has articulated it more. Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor, the new national security advisor of the Biden administration, is saying the US should devote more military assets and resources for freedom of navigation missions in South China Sea, which is the music to the ears even for a Trump team, you know. In that sense, although there's a lot of domestic polarization and ideological rivalry and hatred between the Democrats and Republicans, on this factor, there seems to be generally a broad consensus. Kurt Campbell has just been named by the Biden administration as their new Indo-Pacific coordinator. This is a new position they're creating within the National Security Council. He's a hawkish Democrat on foreign policy. He was architect of the pivot to Asia policy under Barack Obama administration. So the idea that the US should focus more and more on Indo-Pacific, I think, is now becoming mainstream. Some people, nitpicking, they look at why has Biden not used the word Indo-Pacific? Does he even believe in this term? There's a lot of, speculation going on. But I think all of that will be put to rest, because typically whenever there's a new US administration, they start off a little slow off the blocks. They think that maybe they can work out a little bit and moderate or lower the temperature with China. But eventually what happens is, because the Chinese push for hegemony is so relentless and so ruthless that whether you're a dove or a hawk, it doesn't matter in Washington. Ultimately, you realize that this is a menace, and that has to be tackled. So I think we would like them to, hit the ground running. And I'm sure that all the Quad partners and all the main players in Indo-Pacific have already reached out to the Biden transition team to ensure that what Trump had envisaged in 2018 will not only carry forward, but will be, fast forwarded. We need more alliances. We need more solidification of the coalitions in the region, which were weak under Trump, because Trump's was more like, unilateral pressure on China. He was not so good at forming alliances or broad-based coalitions, but we are expecting more from Biden. Of course, there are a lot of domestic problems, and it's not easy for the US to immediately come in the new administration and start applying pressure on China, like as case. But nonetheless, I think it's a step in the right direction. So releasing it is to ensure that the US knows and does not forget who the real challenge is. It is not Russia. It is not Iran. It is not even North Korea, although North Korea is a subset of the Chinese problem. It is China. So let's put it up front.
Mr. Cholia, so while we talk about China emerging as a great threat in the Indo-Pacific region and the US seeing India as a counterbalance to China, let me also understand from you, why is the Indo-Pacific region becoming the new arena for strategic rivalry? And if so, what should India's approach be towards getting more and more like-minded countries in its fold and, then countering China more aggressively?
Yeah, the reason why Indo-Pacific is now like the fulcrum for geopolitical contestation is because of the, phenomenal rise of China. And until 20 years ago, it was not seen as so important. In fact, even until the Obama administration and even for a while under Trump, there was a division of attention. I mean, the US was often distracted by Russia, by the Middle East. George W. Bush went into wars in the Middle East, and in many ways, it allowed China to quietly, build muscle and to strengthen itself without any kind of pressure or any kind of check on its rise. Now, as of 2020, US Indo-Pacific Command, for example, has something like 60% of all the US Navy ships are in this region. 55% of the army, US military army is positioned here. 2/3 of the Marines are in the Indo-Pacific. So you can see that concentration. And likewise, the Chinese counter buildup is also tremendous. I mean, the kind of anti-ship missiles they have developed, the kind of aerial thrust they are making on Taiwan, across the South China Sea, their Coast Guard, their Navy, so in that sense, and also the Chinese have also tried to wade into our backyard in a big way in the last decade or so. In the name of Belt and Road Initiative, they have encroached. They have got close relationships with many of India's traditional neighbors. And we see that in Sri Lanka. We've seen that in the past in Maldives, in Bangladesh, in Nepal. So in that sense, the Chinese do not believe that their overcapacity in terms of industrial production and the surpluses they have accumulated, they do not believe that they can be used domestically. They need access to more and more territory. And the debt trap, the way they are grabbing a strategic land all over. So I think that is what is creating this perfect storm in the Indo-Pacific. And like many of the American thinkers and policymakers are saying, there is a problem with balance of power. And historically, whenever the balance of power in Asia is getting skewed, the US tries to hold it back and tries to retain the status quo. So the US is still a resident power in the Indo-Pacific, but increasingly they believe that if it comes to war, short of war, they are not able to dislodge the Chinese. The Chinese are breaking through what is called the first island chain, second island chain, all the old notions of containing China. The Chinese are just bursting at the seams and breaking free. So this is the time, I think that's why, and India, Japan, Australia, some of the ASEAN countries like Indonesia, Vietnam, South Korea, people often don't mention South Korea. The problem during Trump was they had the vision, but they're very haphazard. And because Trump had other agendas, populist agendas, he could not bring everybody together under one platform. For example, Japan and South Korea almost broke away their intelligence sharing, joint defense, everything had gone awry over a historical dispute. The US could not bring them together. They were struggling. But I think under Biden, there's going to be more of an emphasis on, it's not going to be USA versus China. The USA realizes it is far away. Geographically, it cannot project power in China's backyard forever and in a massive way. So they need everybody else along. And that is where India matters. That's where these other countries matter. And all of us should realize this, and we should extract better terms from the US going forward, knowing that they are desperate to stop China. And we should also make sure that the US does not, as I said, get diverted by other crises and other regions of the world, because that would be another costly mistake. Once we have seen this 2 to 3 times in the last 20 years, and we would not want them to again get distracted with other crises. So I think it's very important to keep the focus on China and to engage with the Americans to work together in third countries. For example, in Sri Lanka,
Yes.
now the Rajapakshas are back. There's a talk that the Chinese are again, muscling in. Let us jointly with the United States and India together do something to alleviate this pressure. Same in Nepal. To give 2 examples, in our own neighborhood, where there is a threat of a renewed, Chinese intervention and overtaking of the local processes. So I think US, India +1, we should have to do together stuff in third countries or fourth countries, or jointly with the Japanese for infrastructure, for building connectivity corridors. It's not only military. Americans often say this: Indo-Pacific is not only a military construct. We have to do civilian things together. So I think there are a lot of areas where there is convergence, but a lot of work needs to be done with a singular vision that we don't want a Sino-centric Indo-Pacific or a Sino-centric Asia at all.
Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture and putting things into perspective for us and our viewers as well.